Hello and welcome to Disney Movie Investigation. If this is your first time, welcome. Each week we take a look at a movie that is featured on Disney+. We take a look at the backstory of how the movie got made, some interesting trivia along the way, as well as future projects that the movie led into. So this week we are taking a look at Atlantis the Lost Empire. This 2001 animated classic, and we are going to look at the development of the movie, the creation of a new language, as well as 2 theme park attractions that were scheduled to be built based on the film, but were ultimately scrapped. And if this is your first time watching, please hit that subscribe button. That way you'll never miss one of our videos when it goes live. So sit back and enjoy this week's Disney Movie Investigation. So like I said, we are taking a look at the movie Atlantis the Lost Empire. This movie was released on June 3rd, 2001, and it was directed by Kirk Wise and Gary Trousdale. The screenplay was written by Tab Murphy, and it was produced by Don Hahn. The budget for this movie was between $90 and $120 million, and it did a box office return of $186.1 million. So the story goes that Don Hahn, Kirk Wise, and Gary Trousdale and Tab Murphy developed the idea for Atlantis the Lost Empire while having lunch in a Mexican restaurant. The trio had just finished The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and along with Tab Murphy, they were trying to figure out the next project that they were going to work on. They were inspired by 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, as well as clairvoyant readings of Edgar Cayce. And they ended up traveling to old army museums and traveled 800 feet underground to Mexico's Crisbel Caverns to draw inspiration for the film, which ultimately became Atlantis. They wanted to avoid the stereotypes of Atlantis, and they wanted to draw a whole new environment from top to bottom. So an example of this is they would design everything, like the clothing that the Atlanteans would wear, how the buildings would look, everything, every aspect. They wanted to create a whole new society. So they also, as well, wanted to develop a language for the Atlanteans. So Mark Okrand, who is famous for developing the Klingon language for Star Trek, was brought in to develop a new language. He was inspired by Indo-European type language, and he would design the written, John Eberson would design the written component, starting with sketches of letters, over 100 sketches for each letter, and show them to the directors for approval. The written language was Brostophian, and it was designed to read from left to right and on the first line, and then right to left on the second line, continuing in a zigzag pattern to stimulate the flow of water. So it was a whole new language, and they use this in a lot of the marketing material, as well as in the film itself. You can see the language in the backgrounds and stuff like that. In terms of the animation style, this movie was animated in all 3 of the major studios for Disney. So the studios in Burbank, Florida, and Paris. And one of the few animated films to be shot in widescreen. And this, I think it was one of the first, actually, at the time. And the visual style of the movie is inspired by comic artist Mike Mignola. And for you comic book fans, he is well known for developing the character of Hellboy. So Magnolia provided the preliminary sketches, the background paintings, character designs, and story ideas. In terms of the score, Disney hired James Newton Howard, and Howard created musical themes for the world of Atlantis, as well as incorporating a lot of Indonesian orchestra sounds, such as bells, chimes, and gongs. So let's take a look at the cast. We have Michael J. Fox, who provides the voice of Milo Thatch. James Gardner provides the voice of Commander Lyle Rourke. Cree Summer provides the voice of Kandakish Kida Nakata, who is the Princess of Atlantis. Leonard Nimoy provides Kasim Nakata, who is the King of Atlantis. Corey Burton provides the voice of Mole. John Mahoney provides the voice of Preston Whitmore. Florence Stanley provides the voice of Wilhelmina Packard. Phil Morris is Dr. Sweet. Don Navallo is Vinny. Jacqueline Obadoras is Audrey. And then Jim Varney provides the voice of Cookie. And it's interesting to note that this was one of the last projects that Jim Varney worked on. He unfortunately passed away before the movie was released. So this was his last kind of Disney role. He's also Ernest in the Ernest movies, as well as he is the original voice of Slinky Dog. So now that we know the characters, let's look at the plot. So the movie is set in 1914, and young linguist orphan Milo Thatch buries himself in books trying to unlock the secret to the destruction of Atlantis. Although his theories are ridiculed by his colleagues, he is persistent in the dreams of one day finding the Lost Isle. His dreams are finally realized when he is given a spot on an expedition financed by a friend of his grandfather's to go search of Atlantis following Milo's guide, the Shepherd's Journal. But the Guardians of Atlantis wait the explorers, pitting them in danger in every turn. And the deadly truth about Atlantis' demise puts Milo, the royal family, and all of Atlantis in mortal jeopardy. So this is a kind of a non-traditional movie for Disney. It's a non-musical, and it's more of an adventure story as opposed to a princess story. And then in terms of the promotion, this was Disney's first movie to use internet marketing. Kellogg, the cereal brand, the cereal brand, partnered with Disney to create a website that contained Atlantis minigames, as well as they did a promotion for a video game where you would send in UPC labels from Kellogg's cereals, and they even created an Atlantis cereal to help promote the film. And if you send in these UPC labels, you would actually get an Atlantis video game sent to you. This was also one of the first films to use mobile technology, as they had downloadable games to cell phones. And then McDonald's was also a partner, and they had commercials and Happy Meal toys to help promote the film. And as well as Frito-Lay had free movie ticket giveaways on their specially marked snacks. In terms of the legacy, there is a little bit of controversy with Atlantis. Naida, The Secret of the Blue, which is a Japanese anime film. It's the plot lines and the characters are very, very similar. However, both directors denied that they had ever even heard of this movie before doing Atlantis, and every comparison is purely coincidence. In terms of video games, there were several video games that were created based on the film. Atlantis the Lost Empire Search for the Journal was released for Microsoft Windows as a first-person shooter. Atlantis the Lost Empire Trial by Fire was also released for Microsoft Windows. And Atlantis the Lost Empire was released for both the PlayStation and Game Boy Advance. In terms of merchandise, there were playsets and action figures that were created based on the film. And Atlantean necklaces were sold at Hot Topic. These were necklaces that came down and that had the blue crystal. And then the Shepherd's Journal was sold in Disney Source as a writing journal for both kids and adults. And then there was actually a game that was the traditional Battleship game by Hasbro. They actually did an Atlantis tie-in where you would the ships from Atlantis would be replaced by the traditional Battleship pieces. And then there were several books as well, based on Milo's adventures as well. In terms of theme park attractions, this is where we get into the bonus story about the 2 theme park attractions that were scheduled to be built, but unfortunately did not happen. There was also walk-around characters for the film. Milo and the Princess Nada were walk-around characters, along with, I believe Mole was there as well, and Vinny and Audrey. In terms of the proposed theme park attractions, we're going to start with Disneyland, and this one had a proposed submarine voyage. And this was going to be a retheming of the classic submarine voyage that originally was themed to 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and they were going to retheme it to Atlantis. Guests would load into the submarines, and they would visit show scenes from the Atlantis, the deep dive into Atlantis. And then there would have been a giant volcano added to the middle of the lagoon, and the monorail actually would have passed through the volcano. And then once they got into the middle of the volcano, guests would actually disembark, and they would have an opportunity to explore Atlantis. So they were actually going to build a full Atlantis kind of island that guests would have been able to kind of explore. And I'm sure there would have been meet and greets there, as well as maybe even a quick service restaurant too. So they had really big plans for this. Ultimately, they decided not to go in this direction, and they actually rethemed the submarines to the Finding Nemo. In Disney World, there was a proposed roller coaster. This would have been an Adventureland past Pirates of the Caribbean. Right now it's a backstage entrance, but they were going to actually demolish whatever's back there and make a roller coaster based on Atlantis. And this attraction would have been called Fire Mountain. This would have been Disney's first upside down roller coasters that would have the guest hang almost like hang gliding. And the guests would go through an exploding volcano and other scenes from the movie. And then, yeah, like it was going to have a dual track, almost like Dueling Dragons, as very similar in Universal Studios. But yeah, this ultimately didn't come to be as well. The reasoning is that the attraction didn't happen was the lukewarm reception from the film, as well as, like, it did make money. Yes, like it made a profit, but it didn't make like numbers like Aladdin or Lion King or Beauty and the Beast type numbers. So they were hesitant about pulling the trigger in a very expensive attraction. Also consider this, then this is just my personal thought, is right after Atlantis came out, 9/11 happened. And this affected both Disney parks very dramatically, as people were very hesitant to travel during that time, as people were very scared of aircrafts. So Disney attendance took a huge dip. So I don't think Disney was super excited about pulling the trigger on super expensive attractions, especially when their finances were taking a bit of a hit. In terms of my final thoughts of the movie, I really like the movie. I think it's an underrated gem. The animation style is very unique compared to other Disney animated films. It's almost like a comic book style, and I know we kind of talked about the Hellboy artist being an inspiration or using inspiration from his style. There's several scenes that it looks like a living, breathing comic book come to life. So I think that's really interesting for this film and kind of makes it unique. The character design is unique, and each character has depth to it. Each character has a backstory, and each one is different from the other, and each one I think is really appealing to the eyes. And then the visual backgrounds are really eye-catching too. They used a lot of CG computer generated backgrounds for this, because this was one of the later films where they were transitioning from hand drawn to computer generated. So I think you can really tell in this one. And then the story I think is engaging because there's a lot of twists and turns. The climax I think it's one of the best scenes in the movie, and it's kind of very well staged. And the visual style of that is really, I think, really excellent as well. So I definitely recommend Atlantis. I think this one gets a bad rap, unfortunately, because it's not Aladdin or Beauty and the Beast or Little Mermaid. It's kind of one of those under the radar Disney movies. So I think this is one I definitely, if you haven't seen it, I would definitely check it out. So yeah, that's pretty much Atlantis. So thanks everyone for joining this week on Disney Movie Investigation. If my question for the week is, if you've seen Atlantis, please leave your comments of what you like about the film, as well as if with the attractions that I described, would you think this was a good idea or bad idea, or would you have been excited to ride an Atlantis themed attraction? Or if you have any ideas what they could do with an Atlantis themed attraction, please let me know in the comments. And then our next video is going to be our continuation of the Disney Star movies, and we are going to take a look at the movie 127 Hours starring James Franco. So thanks everyone for joining, and I hope you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.